Hey now everyone, Matt here. Hopefully everyone is enjoying our AI podcast hosts, Scott and Sally. They're not too bad, but I will admit today they made a few mistakes, especially in pronunciations with scarif. They call it scarif. So watch out.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. I wanted to focus in on someone who I thought was so interesting when I was watching Andor.
Oh, okay.
And he sort of flew under the radar a little bit, but I thought was just absolutely fascinating, and that's Lonnie Jung.
Oh, Lonnie Jung, yeah.
Yeah.
He's very interesting. There's a lot going on with him.
There is, and it really makes you think, like, if we're going to be focusing on a galaxy-wide rebellion against this kind of monolithic evil empire, what does that look like on the ground level? Like for individuals.
Yeah, the individual stories, the individual people.
Yeah, what are their lives like?
Yeah.
So, Lonnie Jung is obviously not a Jedi. He's not a famous general, but he's right in the middle of it.
He's very much involved in the conflict, yeah.
Yeah, and so he's kind of this window, I think, into the human cost of a galaxy-wide rebellion.
Yeah, absolutely. And, especially with Andor Season 2 coming out, I think understanding some of these, like, supporting characters like Lonnie Jung and like their stories and their journeys is really important for like the thematic stuff that's going to be happening in Season 2.
Yeah, and maybe understanding those kinds of characters, even the seemingly minor ones, will give us insight into how Season 2 might go.
Totally. And then even just like, rewatching Season 1, it's like, okay, I get why he made the choices he made because of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so what we have on Lonnie Jung is some canonical stuff. So from the show, of course, we see him in Andor. But then we also have the Andor, the official guide, and this is by Luke Cunard.
Okay, so this is like a companion book.
Yeah, it's a companion book that came out for the first season. And then we also have Star Wars, The Rebel Files. And this one's really cool. Jason Fry wrote this one.
Okay.
And this is presented as intelligence collected by the rebellion. So the idea is that, like Cassian himself had put this file together.
Like in universe, it's
in universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun, and there's some really cool handwritten notes and things like that are kind of worked into it.
I love stuff like that. That's so cool. So it's like we get like a peek into like what Cassian was up to, and then some of the people around him.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and for the mission of this deep dive, I was really hoping we could take what we know about Lonnie Jung from these canonical sources and maybe get an idea a little bit of who he was.
That's true.
And what's his story and what does his arc tell us about the rebellion, about the empire, about I think this question of duty and family and all of that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting tension that's set up, and it's obviously something that's explored like throughout Star Wars. And we see it kind of from both sides, right? We see it from the Empire side, and like we see it from the Rebel Alliance's side. But I think like in the case of Lonnie Jung, it's a really, really interesting case study of like how that plays out, because it's not clear right at the outset like what's going to happen, what choice he's going to make.
Right, and even at the end of Season 1 of Andor, it's like, well, where does he go from here?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's start at the very beginning. So Lonnie Jung, he joins the ISB. This is around 11 BBY, give or take.
Okay, so this is like during the height of the Empire.
Right, of the Empire, yeah. Because
Okay.
they're really flexing their muscles, they're consolidating power, the Death Star is under construction.
Right, so the galaxy's really feeling like the weight of the Empire at this point.
Very much so. But he's not some like true believer in the Empire or anything. He joins, we don't get all the details, but it seems like he's ambitious, he's looking to make a career, to climb the ranks,
And that tracks with, what we know about the Empire, right? Like it's very much presented as like this very like bureaucratic, structured kind of, uptight organization. So like it makes sense that someone would be like, "Oh, I can climb the ladder here."
Sure. Yeah.
It's very much giving it like, office vibes, right?
Yeah, and he's good at it because just a few years later, he's made contact with Luthen Rael.
Okay, so Luthen Rael, for those who need a reminder, he's one of the leaders of the early Rebel Alliance.
Right, and this is key because at this point there isn't one unified rebellion, right? There are all of these kind of little cells, these little pockets of resistance all over the galaxy.
Right, so they're not organized yet, they're not unified.
Not at all.
Okay.
And so Lonnie is kind of an ideal recruit for Luthen because he's already in the ISB. He's already rising through the ranks.
Right.
And Luthen can use him to feed him information, but also get information from him. And what we know about their relationship is that it was very, very secretive.
So it was like a single point of contact, basically.
Single point of contact. As far as we know, no one else knew that Lonnie was working with Luthen.
Wow.
And no one else knew that Luthen was working with Lonnie.
So they kind of had to like really trust each other.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're both taking a huge risk here, right? Because like if either of them gets found out, like it's not good.
Yeah, the stakes are really, really high.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the sources we have kind of point to the fact that, you know, Lonnie, he wasn't necessarily driven by some like burning hatred of the Empire, at least at first.
Okay, so he's not like a super ideologically driven like freedom fighter like from the jump.
No, not really. I mean, we don't get a ton on his backstory.
Yeah.
But it does seem like it was much more of like this was an opportunity. Luthen approached him, probably saw something in him that he was, you know, ambitious, that he could be, you know, molded, and also Luthen was offering him things, right?
Right. So it's mutually beneficial. It sounds like he's getting something out of this as well.
Yeah, information, you know, stuff that helps him rise through the ranks, and in return, he's giving Luthen information about Imperial activity, troop movements, things like that.
Right, which is incredibly valuable to the rebellion, even if it's just like little pockets of rebellion.
Yeah. And that arrangement, it seems to work for quite a while, because by 5 BBY...
Okay, so we're moving like 6 years, roughly 6 years.
About 6 years later.
Okay.
He's been promoted. He's made lieutenant in the ISB.
So he's done well for himself.
Done really well for himself. And you know, this is a key thing because it shows like he's not just some low-level analyst. He's actually in charge of things.
Right. He's making decisions.
Yeah. So in 5 BBY, he's an ISB supervisor.
Okay.
And he has jurisdiction over 2 sectors. We have the Abrion sector and we have the Bright Jewel sector.
So these are like regions of space that he's responsible for, like the Imperial security in these sectors.
That's right.
Okay, and so what is that like? What does his day-to-day look like?
So we get a little bit of a glimpse of that in the sources, especially in the show itself, because he's part of this board of supervisors.
Okay.
That meets regularly under the leadership of Major Partagaz.
Okay, I remember Partagaz.
And so what they do is they go over intelligence reports, they discuss potential threats, and Lonnie is right there in the thick of it.
Right. So he's privy to like all of this like high-level ISB stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and the pressure's really on, right? Because they're expected to find and eliminate any and all resistance to the Empire.
Right. That's their whole job.
And that's got to be a really tough position for him to be in, right?
Oh yeah.
Because on the one hand, he's got to appear like completely loyal to the Empire, you know?
Yeah, you can't slip up at all.
He can't slip up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's trying to help the rebellion as much as he can without getting caught.
Yeah, so he's constantly walking this tightrope.
Absolutely.
Which is, like you can imagine, incredibly stressful and tough.
It's got to be incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
And then there's another wrinkle.
Okay, another wrinkle.
Yeah. So between 6 and 5 BBY.
Okay, so this is like right before he becomes supervisor, he's a lieutenant at this point.
Yeah, just before he becomes supervisor, he gets married.
Oh, wow.
And he has a daughter.
Okay, so now he's got a family. Now he's got like even more to lose.
So much more to lose. Yeah.
And this really, really seems to change him.
Okay, so it's not just about like his own neck anymore. It's about like his family as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we actually see this in one of his meetings with Luthen. He tells him...
This is in 6 BBY, right? This is their last meeting.
Their last meeting.
Right.
He says, I can't do this anymore. I'm a father now. I had no idea how it would feel.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Like he's clearly like having a change of heart, a change of perspective. Like his priorities are shifting.
Yeah, his priorities have shifted, and all of a sudden that danger, that risk, it's not just theoretical anymore.
Yeah, it's real now. He's got skin in the game.
It's real.
Yeah.
And he has something to lose.
Yeah.
And something very, very precious to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a parent, but I can imagine that like becoming a parent, you know, changes your outlook on a lot of things.
I would think so.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to like risk and like, your own mortality. For sure. So let's kind of fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
We're going to get into some of the ISB board meetings.
Yeah.
And these are fascinating, I think, because you really get a sense of like, the inner workings of the Empire.
Yeah, the bureaucracy, the day-to-day.
Yeah, it's not all like, Star Destroyers and lightsabers, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, paperwork and meetings and...
Yeah, there's got to be a lot of boring stuff that happens in the Empire.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. So we see Lonnie in these board meetings, and one of the things that comes up is the need for increased security
Okay.
in the Abrion sector.
Okay, so this is one of the sectors that he's in charge of.
He's directly responsible for it.
Okay, yeah.
And Partagaz, Partagaz is all about efficiency, right? He's all about like why are we spending more resources here? What's the justification?
Right, because that's taxpayer money.
Right.
That's like Imperial credit.
It's Imperial credits, yeah.
Going to security.
And Lonnie, he's very calm. He's very cool under pressure. He says, well, it's just proactive measures because of the increase in construction shipments to Scarif.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So Scarif
Right.
is where they're building the Death Star.
That's right.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he's like subtly...
He's trying to manage the situation.
Yeah, he's trying to manage the situation. He's trying to make sure that the Death Star gets built.
Yeah, but he's also trying to not raise any red flags.
Right.
He doesn't want to draw too much attention.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm helping the rebellion by making sure that this Death Star gets built."
Right.
Yeah. So he's got to be really like careful about how he presents this information.
He's got to play it very carefully.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting moment, I think, because it shows like how good he is at his job.
Yeah, he's very good at playing the game.
But also, he's using that skill to help the rebellion.
Right. It's the kind of like cutting both ways, right? Like his skills as an ISB officer are like benefiting the rebellion.
Yeah. And then in another meeting, Lonnie is tasked with explaining why his sector is lagging behind.
Okay, so he's getting called out for
He's getting called out.
not performing as well as the other sectors.
Yeah, and he's got to come up with some explanations, right? He's under pressure.
Right.
And he offers 3 different theories. Maybe it's staffing issues, maybe it's, logistical problems, whatever.
You got to come up with something.
He's got to come up with something. And Partagaz is like not having it.
Like he's not buying it.
No.
Okay.
And he immediately demands an audit of the hyperspace routes to Ord Mantell.
Oh, wow. So he's like really cracking down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looking for any sign of inefficiency or corruption.
Right, or anything suspicious.
Yeah. And again, you see Lonnie like just trying to keep his cool.
Yeah.
And he's trying to navigate this incredibly difficult situation.
So he can't like blow up. He can't lose his cool in front of Partagaz.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is like he's in these meetings where they're discussing things that he's actually involved in.
Right, yeah, because he's feeding information to the rebellion.
Right, yeah, because he's feeding information to the rebellion.
He's feeding information to the
So he's got to be hearing like, the fruits of his labor in a way.
He's got to be hearing like, oh, they're getting closer,
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're starting to figure this out. And so like one really good example of this is Dedra Meero.
Okay, Dedra Meero, yeah, she's a major player in Andor. She's the one who's really like obsessed with finding these rebels.
She's the one who's really like laser focused on like rooting out the rebellion.
Right.
And Lonnie is present when she is first starting to put together the pieces. Oh, okay. So he sees like the early stages of her
The
investigation.
very early stages, yeah.
Okay.
So she suspects that there is some kind of organized effort to acquire Imperial military components.
And that is Luthen's network, right?
Yeah.
That's what Luthen is doing. Is he's getting all these parts for the rebellion.
Yeah, so he's running all over the galaxy, getting these parts, these components, and then supplying them to different rebel cells.
Yeah, and that's something that we see kind of throughout Andor, like the acquisition of materials and technology. It's like a big part of what the early rebellion's doing.
Yeah. So Lonnie is there when Dedra is starting to put that together, and then later on he's actually there when she presents this theory to Colonel Yularen.
Okay, Colonel Yularen. Now, Colonel Yularen is like a big deal in the Empire, right?
Huge deal. He's one of the top guys.
Yeah, and he's someone who's been around for a while, right? He was in the Clone Wars.
Clone Wars, yeah. He's been in the Republic Navy. He's in the Imperial Navy. He's kind of seen it all.
So he's someone who, like, you know, you don't want to mess with Colonel Yularen.
No. And so Lonnie is in the room.
Yeah.
When Daedra is making her case.
That there's this organized rebellion.
That this isn't just like random acts of terrorism or whatever.
Right.
That there's actually something much bigger going on.
Oh man, that's gotta be tough for Lonnie to like sit through.
It's gonna be incredibly tense.
Yeah.
You know? And it really makes you think, like, what is going through his head at that moment?
I mean, he's probably sweating bullets under that Imperial uniform, right?
Yeah, like how does he not just like break down right there?
Yeah, he's got to be thinking, like, oh man, she's on to us.
Right. And then of course things really ramp up after the Aldhani heist.
Right, because that's like a major turning point, right? That's like the first like really big, you know, public attack that the rebellion pulls off,
and it gets the Empire's attention.
Yeah, they're not messing around anymore.
No,
this is a real threat.
Yeah, and so Lonnie is present again when Partagaz is informing the board about the new security legislation.
Okay, so they're cracking down even more, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like they're going to be searching ships. They're going to be monitoring communications. They're going to be, you know, really clamping down on everything.
Right. So it's going to be even harder for the rebellion to operate now.
So much harder.
Yeah.
And later on, he's involved in the discussions surrounding Cassian Andor.
Okay, so Cassian Andor, obviously the main character at Andor.
Right.
And he was the one who like masterminded the Aldhani heist, basically.
Yeah, he was the one who put it all together.
Right.
And Lonnie actually points out that Andor's name keeps popping up.
Okay, so he's noticing this pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Daedra Mero's documents, you know, she's doing her investigations.
Right.
And she's starting to zero in on Andor.
Okay.
And Lonnie's like, well, this guy, he's connected to a lot of things.
Yeah, he's a common denominator here.
Yeah. And he also clarifies that the stolen Starpath unit was left on Ferrix.
Okay, so that's another detail about the Aldhani heist. The Starpath unit is this like navigational device that's very valuable to the Empire.
Yeah. And Lonnie, he knows this, right? He's aware of all these little details.
So he's really like plugged into like what's happening with the rebellion and with the Empire's investigation.
Yeah. And it really shows like how much he's playing both sides.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he's got to be like very careful. He's got to be like playing 4D chess in his head to keep all of this straight.
Absolutely. And then there's this other incident where a rebel pilot is captured. And this pilot was associated with Anto Kreegyr.
Anto Kreegyr, another rebel leader.
Yeah, another rebel leader. And they're discussing like what to do with this pilot, right?
Right, yeah.
And one of the officers suggests just destroying the pilot's ship.
Okay, so just like get rid of the evidence.
Yeah, like make it look like an accident and, you know, problem solved.
Right.
And Lonnie, he steps in and he says, no, you can't do that.
Okay, so he's pushing back against that.
He's pushing back.
Yeah, okay.
And his reasoning is that Kreegyr, he would know, right? He would know that something was up, that this wasn't an accident.
Yeah, because he's expecting his pilot to return.
Right.
Okay.
And so Lonnie suggests that they investigate the ship normally.
Okay, so he's suggesting a more like subtle approach.
It's a subtle approach.
Yeah.
Like, you know, make it look like you're just doing your job.
Right, and not raising suspicion.
Yeah, and Partagaz agrees with him.
Okay, so Lonnie's opinion carries some weight here.
He's respected.
Yeah.
He's seen as someone who, you know, who knows what he's talking about.
Right.
And this is really key, I think, because it shows like how good he is at maintaining his cover.
Yeah, he's really good at like blending in, you know, not making waves, but also like subtly influencing things.
Yeah. But of course, all of this, it's taking its toll, right?
Right, yeah.
Like we talked about, you know, he's got a family now. He's getting even more to lose.
Yeah.
And the pressure is just mounting.
And the rebellion is getting closer and closer, right? Like the Empire is starting to like really hone in on Luthen's network.
Yeah. And so after about a year of silence, so this is now 5 BBY.
Okay.
Lonnie decides to reach out to Luthen again.
Okay, so after their last meeting in 6 BBY where he's like, I'm out, I'm done, now he's reaching out to Luthen again.
Yeah, and he's got two main goals here.
Okay, what are they?
First, he wants to pass on information about Marrow's investigations.
Okay, so he's still trying to help the rebellion. He's still trying to provide them with intel.
Yeah, he's still committed, but he's
Right.
also trying to get out.
Okay, so he's trying to have his cake and eat it too, in a way.
He wants out. He wants to protect his family. He wants to be done with this.
Yeah, he wants to wash his hands of the whole thing.
Yeah, and so he uses these kind of classic spy signals.
Oh, okay, like what kind of signals?
So there's a mark on a fountain, and there's a broken stair rail.
Okay, so it's like dead drops and signals like that.
Yeah, very classic, like spy stuff.
Yeah.
And this immediately raises red flags.
Okay.
Clea Markey, who is Luthen's lieutenant, essentially.
Right, she's very suspicious.
Suspicious,
Yeah.
doesn't trust anyone.
Which is fair in their line of work.
She thinks it's a trap.
Okay, so she thinks it's a setup.
Yeah. Okay.
But Luthen, he decides to go ahead with it.
Okay, so Luthen is willing to take the risk.
He's willing to take the risk, yeah.
Okay.
And so they meet
Okay, and where did they meet?
in the Coruscanti Undercity.
Okay, so it's like a very clandestine, like, shadowy, like underworld kind of meeting.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
And this meeting, it's really tense.
Okay.
Lonnie, he's very uncomfortable with some of the things that Luthen is suggesting.
Okay, like what kind of things?
So, for example, Luthen, he's very pragmatic, right?
Yeah.
He's willing to make sacrifices.
He's got to make tough choices.
He's got to make tough choices.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying, like, look, we can't save everyone.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality of war, right?
And that's that, my friends. Like I said, they didn't want to work today, so they just kind of quit talking. But hopefully you enjoyed the recap of Lonnie Jung. Don't forget, new episodes of the Star Wars Time Show every Wednesday, 5:30 p. East on youtube.com/Star Wars Time Show. Like, notifications, subscribe, consider becoming a member.